What's up guys, Filterless here. There are a few reasons why G-Helper is something I still use and why you might want to use it as well. Not only does it give you quieter fans, but also more control over the watt settings you want to use. However, Armoury Crate and G-Helper can conflict with each other, so I'll be going over how to set them up properly to work together. I'll also be throwing in a few extra tips and tricks along the way that I'm sure you'll find helpful. So let's go ahead and jump straight into it. And one of the first things I wanted to show y'all is in G-Helper, it's called balance, but if we go to Armoury Crate, that is the same thing as performance mode. The rest, they do match. So if we go to silent here and we come over here and go to silent, you can see they're the same. And then also with turbo, it's also called turbo here. So the only difference is performance is just named balanced in G-Helper. And moving on to the fan test, you can see this little red square that I put in here. That's which one the audio is coming from. So first we're doing 17 watts. This is the balanced preset on G-Helper. And then in Armoury Crate, we have to do the manual mode where they have the fans a bit louder, but here at 17 watts, take a listen. So here we have 17 watts playing. It's very quiet. I've boosted the audio, but you really won't even be able to hear it. It's almost silent. You might hear a slight hum. So let's go ahead and jump to 20 watts here and take a listen to the difference here. So I'll go ahead and play it right now. And you can hear this is about the same as 17 watts. And as we come over here, you can hear that pretty loud. Once again, this is G-Helper on balance. So if we take a look at this temperature right here, we can see 71 Celsius for the temperature, which I feel like is still a decent temperature. It's not too hot. Over here though, we're at 56 Celsius. And I don't really see a reason to run it this cool. Just to show y'all, Asus does not mind running this extremely hot. We can see here we're in performance mode running this benchmark. As soon as we go to turbo, they will boost the watts. Take a look at this. It's going to boost up to about 50 for a couple seconds, if it even gets there, and then it's going to level off at 43 for the next 2 minutes. And look at our temperatures here, 84 Celsius. So Asus doesn't really care about temperature, or they would have disabled this a long time ago, which is another reason G-Helper is great, because we're not getting into the 90 Celsius wasting battery for no reason. There's really almost no performance difference. Take a look at this. We're at 52 FPS. Then we'll come in here, go to G-Helper at 25 watts. Let's see how far it drops. 49 FPS, and look at our temperatures immediately dropping down. So we're getting 3 FPS, the system's running extremely hot, and the temperature skyrocketing for 2 to 3 additional FPS. So I just don't think it's worth it. That's another thing that G-Helper does really well. We can just lock that watts so it doesn't do that boost. So let's go ahead and go back to the fan test here. I switched G-Helper over to the turbo mode, which is a little bit more of an aggressive fan profile. And then Armoury Crate, it's always running in manual. That's the only way we can lock the watts. So let's take a listen here to turbo on the left with G-Helper at 20 watts and then 20 watts on Armoury Crate. So I'll go ahead and play it right now. You should be able to hear that. This is a bit quieter, and then this really is moving. So even here at 20 watts with turbo, decent temperatures, 64 Celsius, the fans are much more bearable. And over here you can see the 56 Celsius. It just doesn't make as much sense when Asus is allowing the system to boost to 90 plus Celsius with that watt increase. So I'd much prefer, I feel like this is a very safe temperature at 64 Celsius. Now here's where you have to have some caution with G-Helper. You can see here we are in the balanced mode at 25 watts, and it's going to keep those fans pretty quiet. So let's go ahead and take a listen. I'm going to go ahead and play it right now. And here you can see we're at 83 Celsius, which is a little bit too hot in my opinion. So what I actually recommend is 25 watts turbo mode, and it's still a little bit quieter. So let's go ahead and take a listen. You can see we're at 67 Celsius now. This is G-Helper in turbo mode. Let's go ahead and play it right now. So you can hear there's still a slight difference, and there's a difference in that temperature. So we're at about 66 Celsius versus about 62. But the quieter fans is definitely worth it. That's in a reasonable range. And then here we are at 30 watts in turbo mode, and then 30 watts in manual and Armoury Crate. And let's go ahead and take a listen. This is going to be really close. So I'm not hearing really any difference there. They are basically identical. Even the temperatures are extremely close. And here we'll jump back over to G-Helper. What I recommend is going up to 14 watts in silent mode if you want to. What I personally run is 12 watts. and I'll go over how to use this with Armoury Crate right after this. I just want to show you all the levels I'm using. When you're in the balance preset, this is where you want to go up to about 19 watts. So from 15 all the way to 19 for balance mode is what I would personally run. You want to set both of these the same so you're not getting any boost. So this will keep it directly at 19 and it will not allow it to boost up. And then for turbo, that is 20 watts and beyond. So if you want to run 25 upwards, however high you want to go, I personally keep this at 25 watts, and for balanced I keep that at 17. That's a really good sweet spot, and going from 15 to 17 watts also gives you a nice jump in performance. And one last thing I wanted to show y'all is you do not want to use a custom fan curve, and here's why. If we check this box, you can see we're at 3000 RPM, and we can drag these all the way down to almost nothing. It doesn't matter. If you look 4000 RPM, it's going to climb up and get pretty loud. The reason it's doing this is essentially activating the Armoury Crate manual mode. So if we come in here to Armoury Crate, we go to settings, operating mode, and then we go to manual. What it's using are these fan curves right here, and they can only go so low, and then it's just overridden. You can see 74%. So you don't want to use the apply custom fan curve. You can see we're at 6800 RPM. Watch what happens as soon as we uncheck this. You'll see this starts dropping. The temperatures will go up a little bit, but look, we're at 6100. 5500. We're still dropping a little. We just hit 45, 4400, 4200. So it's becoming pretty much silent again, and our temperatures are still looking really good. So just make sure you never use this unless you're wanting really loud fans. Then you could check this box. Now, one last thing that's really neat about G-Helper, you'll see this plus right here, and we can actually add in custom profiles. So you'll see right here, it shows custom 1. Also, you want to make sure you click apply power limits on all of these to make sure it actually applies these. If you uncheck it, it's just going to use the default silent mode. This would be the default performance in Armoury Crate, and this would be the default turbo. So you do need to check this for it to use the specific wattage you set. And here on this custom profile, let's go ahead and set this to, we'll do 20 watts. So we want a 20 watt profile. And then what I like to do is name this. And the reason for that is if we were to switch it right now, you'll see it goes silent, balanced, turbo, and then custom 1. Well, what we can do is just name this 20 watts, just like that. Now, when we switch it, we'll know exactly what wattage we're using. So we can see silent, balanced, turbo, and then 20 watt. And you can create a ton of these. You can have, I think it's over 20. I think it was 24 of these custom profiles. So you can have every watt setting that you want. And one thing to note, when you use this custom profile, it is actually going off the fan curve of balanced. So you can see here, we're at over 80 Celsius and the fan is only at 4200 RPM, which would be the same if we were in balanced. So what I would recommend for these custom profiles is to stay under 20 watts, kind of treat it as a balanced profile. So if you want to have 11 watts, a 7 watt profile, a 15 or 13 watt profile, you can add them in here. But I would try to stay below that 20 watt mark just to make sure that the system runs cool, because you really don't want to be running it, I would say, over 80 Celsius all the time. And another last tip, in Windows power mode, I would make sure all of these are set to best power efficiency. The reason this is important is let's go ahead and pull up this Asus monitor, and you can see here we're at about 2700 megahertz. As soon as we switch this back to, let's do best performance, you will see it will start boosting, and it's for no reason. This is very graphic intense. It does not even need the CPU to boost, and it just kind of wastes your battery, and it will waste power if you are running higher power settings. It will also increase the fan noise under a lot of circumstances. So what I recommend, drop it down to best power efficiency, and you'll see it will drop back down to around 26, just kind of what it needs instead of unnecessarily boosting like we just saw. And the last quick tip before we jump into Armoury Crate and start setting this up is the battery charge limit down here. It's really nice to have 5% increments, so we can do 75, we could even do 70, which I found myself doing on my Asus laptop because it's always plugged in. And here in the Asus app, you can see all we have is that 80% for battery care mode, which is still great. But if you want finer levels of control, then G-Helper is definitely the way to go. You might even want to knock this up to 85% or 90%. All right, so here we are in Armoury Crate, and one of the things I wanted to show y'all is a shortcut that I use a lot. So I am in gamepad mode for this to work, and I have it set up where if I click in the back button back here and I hold it, and then I click the left joystick, stick in, you can see it will switch the profiles. So I have silent, which is 12, 17 watts. I've got my 25 watt turbo, and then I click this 15 watts and another 20 watt. So I can immediately just click this in and switch to the one I want and then get back to playing the game. And to set that up, what you're going to want to do is go to Armoury Crate. We're going to click settings up here. Then we're going to go to configure right here under control mode. We have our gamepad mode here. So just click on configure on that. Now for this to work, you have to have at least one of the back paddles set up as a secondary function. So if you don't have that checked and you're using it for something else, this won't work. So you'll have to make it where this is specifically designated for holding and then being able to use a bunch of other shortcuts here. And so what you want to do is come down here to the left stick. We can click A on that to open it up. And then we're going to come down here to this secondary function. We're just going to hit A to open that up. Now what we need to do is come over to combine keys here. And then we're going to click on this add combination keys. And you'll see this new macro right here. It came up, macro 03. We're going to click on this little edit button right here. And the G-Helper shortcut is Control, Shift, and then F5. So as long as it looks like this, where you've got left control key, left shift, and F5, then we can just hit B to go back. Now it hasn't actually selected it yet. So what you need to do is actually tap on that macro to select it. And you'll see it shows macro 03. So we can just hit B to go back. And then there we go. We have the macro there. You could even change it to G-Helper or something else so it can be identified pretty easily. Also, I've assigned the back view button to an Xbox button. So if you come in here and you want to do a secondary function as an Xbox button, you can click on that secondary function. You're going to come up here to action, click on that. Then down here, you'll see the Xbox button. So you click that and you can see it's assigned. So if we close out of Armoury Crate, here we are in Steam. If I hold that back button and I press this, it's an Xbox button and you can see it's starting up Steam. Anytime I want, I just hold this back paddle and I hit this button and there we go. We've got the menu, we can open it up. And this is kind of like Steam OS interface right here. It's pretty similar. So you can get to all your games. You can customize your controls, settings. So it's kind of neat to be able to play in this mode and be able to get to this menu so you can close out of games or get to your settings. All right, and now how to get G-Helper and Armoury Crate to work really well together. If you have messed with this setting that I'm about to show you, then it's going to be a little bit more tricky. If you have not touched this setting, then you should be good. So if we were to come over this game, click on it and go to game profile, we're still good. Even if we come in here and remap keys, the right stick, the trigger, the vibration. However, if you have even clicked on configuration, then there's going to be some additional steps that you'll need to take for each game for it to work with G-Helper. The reason for this, and I'll show you real quick, if we are in, let's say, silent mode while we're plugged in, which would be kind of strange, right? And then I've just unplugged the device and let's do something like turbo mode for unplugged, which is really not something you would run. Just so I can show y'all what's going to happen is as soon as we click on configuration, it is going to save the default settings that we have. So for this, it's going to be silent turbo mode and it's going to be flipped. So let's go ahead and click on configuration and you'll see here operating mode AC when it's plugged in has set it to silent mode. And for our unplugged mode, it has actually defaulted to turbo. And I'm going to use Skyrim as an example because it's a little easier to show you what's happening when we try to launch it. So now it is going to default to these anytime we launch it, but there's another kicker here. So you can see here, we're unplugged, it's on turbo. So I'm going to go ahead and plug it in. And there you can see it just switched to silent mode. Now here's what happens when you minimize the game. And to simulate that, I'm just going to click on Steam. And let's say we're in performance mode. Now, when I click on this game, it is going to switch. So if I click this, we just went into silent mode. So when you minimize the game, it is actually going back to the default profile that you have set on your desktop. And as soon as you open it, it's going to immediately choose that power setting. What this means is it's almost impossible to use G-Helper because if you do anything, it's just going to override whatever setting you chose. So on G-Helper, I could go to balanced and just this being open, you can see we're back in performance. So as soon as I click Skyrim, it just overrode G-Helper and it went into silent mode. Now Armoury Crate has taken control. So the main way to fix this is if you've gone into configuration on any games, then what you want to do is either go to unassigned or you could even do performance I usually just set it to performance because that leads us right into the next part. What I recommend is actually just running performance mode across the board. So you want to plug the device in. So you can see here, we're plugged in on performance. I'm going to go ahead and unplug it. So here we are unplugged. I'm going to go ahead and switch this to performance. So now no matter if I'm plugged in or unplugged, it will stay in performance mode. The reason this is key is if you're going to unplug it, you don't want Armoury Crate to be switching the profile. As long as it stays in performance, it will save what we have in G-Helper. So if I have this set to 17 watts or even turbo mode, it doesn't matter if we unplug or unplug it because it's not switching the profile, so it's not reapplying this, so these will work. Now, if you have set a lot of games up and configured them and you've gone to that power setting and you have power settings everywhere, you can manually change all of them, or the only way to fix it is to uninstall Armoury Crate and reinstall it. That will reset the profiles. Even if you delete something like, let's say, Skyrim here, so we'll go ahead and delete it. Even if we add it back, it's still going to have that set to performance. I can show you right here. We'll go to add. Here we are selecting Skyrim. So we added it back. Before I open it, I will go ahead and do turbo. Remember, it was set to performance. So let's see if it's still saving those power settings. So here we go. So this should set the unplugged mode to turbo, like we're in right now, as soon as we click this, unless it already has those settings still saved. So here we go, configuration, you can see it actually saved them. So as soon as you add it back, it will start overwriting those again. All right, so let's go ahead and test this out. We are in the balanced 17 watt mode inside of G-Helper, and we're on performance. And remember, it's going to stay on performance because we have Skyrim set to performance. Let's go ahead and come in here. One other thing to note, it doesn't matter if you are in auto or gamepad mode. If you watched a video I did previously, gamepad mode is a global override for the controls. So in here, if we're in gamepad mode, it won't use any of the custom game profiles we have set up. Instead, it is going to always use this. However, the power mode specifically in these game profiles, it doesn't care if you're in auto or not, it will keep applying it. So that's why we have to change it, no matter if you're using auto or gamepad mode. So let's go ahead and launch Skyrim in auto mode. So here we go. All right, and here we are loaded in. Let's see what we get to. There you go, 17 watts. So it did not change even though we launched the game. So it will stay at 17 watts when we're in balanced. Skyrim is a really weird game. You can't adjust the volume and you can't change the profile without minimizing it. It's really weird. So we're going to go ahead and do a little minimize, and I'm going to switch over to turbo. So 25 watts. And you can see when we go in the game, there we are right at 25 watts, getting 80 FPS at that 900p. It looks amazing, plays amazing. And here I'll even exit out of this. So we are still in performance mode here, but we're in turbo and G-Helper. So don't really have to worry about Armoury Crate anymore, and we'll launch it again. So you'll see as we launch this, because it's not changing, it's going to hold this 25 watts and we are good no matter what we do. We can turn the system off, turn it on. Everything is going to hold that value. And here we are loaded back in, and you can see the watts climbing right to 25 again, even though we're still set to performance here in Command Center. And so that is how you get it set up where it works great. All right, as one last quick example, I'm going to launch Subnautica in big picture mode, and we will see it's going to hold that 25 watts, even though it's a completely different game. And so here we are at the 25 watts, and we're getting like 80, 90 FPS, over 100 if we look up. It just goes crazy. Now, this might be so much that we want to change the power setting. Well, here's what's really cool. I'm in gamepad mode, and I showed you how to set that shortcut up earlier. So if I just hit the back paddle and click the left joystick in, I can just change it while I'm in the game real quick. So here, let's go to balance, which is 17 watts. You can see up there, it just changed it. And now we can just jump off and play. And let's say we want to up the power a little more. I can just click that back button in, go to turbo, instantly resume right where we were at. Let's say I want to do 15 watts. There we go. 15 watts just by clicking that in. So it's a really great shortcut to have up. And since we launched Subnautica in big picture mode, we can hit that back button again and the view button, and you can see we can actually bring up the Xbox menu. So we have a little Xbox button to be able to bring that up while we're playing. Since we're in big picture, we can even come in here, go down and exit out of the game if we want, adjust our controller settings, go to our library, pretty much everything you'd be able to do when you're on something like the Steam Deck. It's close, not everything, but a lot of the features are there and it works pretty well. And anyway, that is pretty much it. I just wanted to show y'all how to get that set up so you can always make sure you're using the proper watts. And it's just really great to be able to just switch over. There's my 20 watt profile. Let's say I want to save a ton of battery. They're silent, and you can see we just dropped a lot of FPS. And yeah, this is a little bit unplayable, so go back to balance 17 watts. There we are, 70, 60 FPS. Great experience. If you did enjoy the video, consider hitting the like and sub button, and I will see you on the next one. Peace.